Assalamualaikum students. Before going to our educational topic, please subscribe my channel Muntzir Mehdi Science TV on YouTube. Press the like button and share this lecture to your friends and classmates who have no access to it to add in their science education. And those students that are preparing privately can benefit from our channel very effectively. Let's come back to our topic. Today we will talk about the differences between the glycolysis and the Krebs cycle. It is the glycolytic picture whereas it is the Krebs cycle picture. First difference between the glycolysis and the Krebs cycle is that glycolysis takes place inside the cytoplasm of any cell of any organism, whereas Krebs cycle functions inside the mitochondria. As mitochondria is a membranous organelle and is found inside only in eukaryotic cells, so Krebs cycle takes place only inside the eukaryotic cells. On the other hand, glycolysis takes place in the eukaryotic cells as well as in prokaryotic cells, which is the first difference between the glycolysis and the Krebs cycle. Second difference between the glycolysis and Krebs cycle is that glycolysis occurs in a straight form, linear form, as you can prove from its diagram that glycolysis consists of a straight pathway, a linear pathway. Students, now you guess by seeing the Krebs cycle diagram that what is the pathway of the Krebs cycle. Let's guess. Yes, you are right. Krebs cycle has a cyclic pathway. It is the second difference. The third difference between the glycolysis and Krebs cycle is that glycolysis is the first step of the respiration process, during which firstly glucose is taken, that is suppleted into a simpler form pyruvate. So during glycolysis, glucose is taken and is suppleted to convert into pyruvate. You can also prove this statement from its diagram that glucose is gradually broken down into the end product of the glycolysis, that is pyruvate. On the other hand, the second step of respiration is the Krebs cycle, during which the end product of glycolysis, that is the pyruvate, is taken, which is converted to an active acetyl coenzyme A, that is also gradually broken down completely to the oxaloacetate. So we can say that during respiration, glycolysis is firstly utilized, whereas Krebs cycle is secondly utilized process. The fourth difference is that glycolysis process is common to both aerobic and anaerobic ways of respiration, modes of respiration. In simple words, we can say that glycolytic process is used in the presence of free oxygen and in the absence of free oxygen. On the other hand, Krebs cycle happens only in aerobic respiration, aerobic condition, meaning that it takes place only in the presence of free oxygen. As glycolysis is a primitive mode of respiration, so it happens in both aerobic and anaerobic conditions, meaning that in the presence of oxygen and in the absence of oxygen. Whereas Krebs cycle occurred after the evolution of complex organelles such as mitochondria, so it is restricted to eukaryotic organisms and aerobic conditions. Fifth difference between the glycolysis and Krebs cycle is that glycolysis splits a glucose molecule into two molecules of pyruvate, which is an organic substance and organic material. However, this pyruvate will be further broken down, so it takes as a raw material during Krebs cycle. As glycolysis is the first process of the respiration, so it degrades a glucose molecule to the extent of pyruvate, and this pyruvate is taken into second process, that is the Krebs cycle. So during Krebs cycle, pyruvate is taken as a raw material that is completely degraded into the inorganic substances such as carbon dioxide and water. As you can also see from the Krebs cycle picture that carbon dioxide is evolved here, here and here, and water is also obtained during Krebs cycle, that is present here. in between fumarate and malate. The sixth difference between the both is that glycolysis utilizes two ATP molecules for the initial phosphorylation of substrate molecules such as glucose. As we have also learned from our previous videos that glycolytic pathway consumes two ATP molecules. The first ATP is utilized in between glucose to glucose 6-phosphate, whereas the second ATP is consumed during the conversion of fructose 6-phosphate to fructose 1,6-diphosphate, that is also known as fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. Here and here. On the other hand, Krebs cycle is different from the glycolytic pathway in the sense that it does not consume, it does not utilize any ATP molecule, but it only produces about 30 ATP molecules that you can see yourself. The seventh difference is that during glycolysis, that glucose molecule that is utilized, that you can see here, releases about 4 ATP molecules during substrate level phosphorylation. Two ATP molecules are released here in between 1,3-diphosphoglyceric acid and 3-phosphoglyceric acid, and two more ATP molecules are obtained during the conversion of phosphoenol pyruvate to pyruvate. So this statement can be proved from glycolytic pathway that one glucose molecule produces about 4 ATP molecules. On the other hand, during Krebs cycle, acetyl coenzyme A that is produced from the end product of glycolysis, the pyruvate, produces about 2 GTP molecules that are present here, as you can see on this Krebs cycle diagram, through substrate level phosphorylation. These two GTP molecules that are obtained during Krebs cycle are quite similar to the ATP molecules. So we can say that glycolysis produces about 4 ATP molecules, whereas Krebs cycle produces about 2 ATP molecules, because GTP molecules are quite similar to the ATP molecules. The eighth difference between the both is that the net energy production from the glycolysis process is 2 molecules of NADH plus 2 molecules of ATPs for only 1 molecule of glucose broken down, whereas Krebs cycle produces about 6 molecules of NADH, 2 molecules of FADH and 2 further molecules of GTP for every 2 molecules of acetyl coenzyme A which are oxidized by the Krebs cycle. 2 more molecules of NADH are also obtained during the conversion of 2 molecules of pyruvate to acetyl coenzyme A that you can see here on this Krebs cycle diagram. I have clearly explained all these Krebs cycle molecules calculation in my previous video. If you want to understand it in detail, then you can see the video of net energy gain of one glucose molecule during the glycolysis and Krebs cycle process. The ninth difference is that the net energy gain from glycolysis process is equal to 8 ATP molecules, whereas the net energy gain of Krebs cycle is equal to 24 ATP molecules, and 6 more ATP molecules are obtained from 2 NADH2 molecules during the conversion of pyruvate to acetyl coenzyme A. Here in between these two substrates, these NADH molecules are obtained, which produces about 6 more ATP molecules. So net energy gain of Krebs cycle becomes 30 ATP molecules. Tenth difference is that during glycolysis, no carbon dioxide is evolved, as you can prove it from the glycolytic pathway that carbon dioxide is not released during any conversion, whereas during Krebs cycle carbon dioxide released at different points such as in between pyruvate and acetyl coenzyme A. Here you can see carbon dioxide is evolved during the conversion of isocitrate to alpha ketoglutarate. Here carbon dioxide is evolved, and in between alpha ketoglutarate to the conversion of succinyl coenzyme A, Here carbon dioxide is also released. So during glycolysis carbon dioxide is not evolved, whereas during Krebs cycle carbon dioxide is released at about 3 points. The 11th difference is that the glycolysis is not connected, not concerned with oxidative phosphorylation, whereas Krebs cycle is connected and is concerned with oxidative phosphorylation. The 12th and final difference between the glycolysis and the Krebs cycle is that oxygen is not utilized, oxygen is not consumed during glycolytic pathway. On the other hand, Krebs cycle utilizes oxygen as a terminal oxidant, as a final oxidant. So students, these were some differences between the glycolysis and the Krebs cycle. How you find these differences, please tell us in comment section. Students, at the end I will encourage you, please be punctual, be hardworking, take your education seriously for the progress of your country, your nation, and also for yourself. It doesn't matter that you are getting education in science or in arts field, but you get it for the progress of your country. If you think about your country, your nation, it will also be a time changer for yourself. It is my encouragement for you today. Thank you for watching this your video.